Tom Mackenzie stopped dead in his tracks. There, silhouetted against the amber glow of his stable lantern, stood three figures that shouldn't exist in his world. Three women, their wet dresses clinging to curves that made his mouth go dry and his hands shake. The tall one, with raven hair, pressed against the wooden beam, her chest rising and falling from their desperate run through the blizzard. Snow melted on her bronze skin, each droplet tracing paths down her throat that Tom found himself following, with eyes he'd trained to look away from temptation for 22 years. The blonde, barely more than a girl, bit her lip and stared at him with defiant eyes, her torn bodice revealing more than any decent woman should. And the third, a mature beauty with knowing eyes, stepped forward with a grace that spoke of experience no church-going woman possessed. "Please," she whispered, and Tom's resolve crumbled like dry leaves. "We need sanctuary." In that moment, Tom Mackenzie, the virgin rancher of Prairie Creek, realized his carefully constructed walls were about to fall. The question was, would he survive what came next? Drop a like if you've ever felt that moment when everything changes. And tell me in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? Tom's hands trembled worse than they had during his first gunfight as he led the three women into his cabin. The storm howled outside, trapping them together in a space that suddenly felt smaller than a coffin and hotter than hell itself. "We escaped Madame Betty's," the mature one said, water still dripping from her auburn hair. "I'm Clara. This is Rose." She gestured to the defiant blonde. "And Maria." The dark-haired beauty with Apache features nodded silently, her obsidian eyes never leaving Tom's face. Clara's dress, once fine silk, now clung to her full figure like a second skin. Tom tried to focus on her words, not the way the firelight played across the swell of her breasts. "Betty was going to sell me to a man who likes to hurt women." Rose laughed bitterly, the sound like breaking glass. "At least you were getting sold to one man. She was lining up three for me." Her torn bodice had given up trying to contain her, and Tom found his gaze drawn to the creamy expanse of skin she displayed without shame. But it was Maria who undid him. As she moved closer to the fire, her wet dress rode up her thighs, revealing legs that spoke of both strength and feminine grace. When she looked at him with those dark, wounded eyes, Tom felt something stir that had nothing to do with lust and everything to do with an ache he'd buried deep. "You're bleeding," Tom managed to croak, noticing the dark stain on Maria's calf. She glanced down, seemingly surprised. "Barbed wire. It's nothing." But Tom was already moving, his protective instincts overriding 22 years of careful avoidance. "Sit. I'll tend to it." As Maria settled onto his rough wooden chair, Tom knelt before her with a bowl of warm water and clean cloth. His hands, steady enough to thread a needle in a gunfight, shook like autumn leaves as he lifted her leg. Her skin was warm silk under his calloused palms. The wound was shallow, but cleaning it required him to push her dress higher, revealing the curve of her thigh. Tom's breathing grew ragged. Maria's breath caught too, but when he looked up, her eyes held no mockery, only wonder. "Your hands," she whispered in accented English. "They're so gentle. Not like—" She trailed off, but Tom understood. In her world, men's hands brought only pain. "I won't hurt you," Tom said, and meant it with every fiber of his being. "Any of you. You're safe here." Clara watched from across the room, something soft entering her expression. Rose had gone quiet, her bravado cracking to reveal the frightened girl beneath. As Tom finished bandaging Maria's wound, their eyes met and held. Something passed between them, electric, dangerous, and absolutely inevitable. For the first time in his adult life, Tom Mackenzie touched a woman not with fear, but with reverence. Outside, the blizzard raged with the fury of hell itself. Inside, 4 broken souls found themselves on the edge of something that would either save or damn them all. The blizzard trapped them for 4 days and 4 nights, and with each passing hour, Tom felt his carefully constructed walls crumbling like ancient stone. Clara took charge of his kitchen with the natural grace of a born homemaker. Watching her move around his cabin, bending to check biscuits in the oven, her dress pulling tight across her rounded hips, Tom discovered muscles he'd forgotten existed. She'd lost a husband, she told him one evening, and her 8-year-old daughter waited with relatives while Clara earned money the only way a desperate woman could. "A good man is rarer than gold, Tom," Clara said one night, her hand briefly touching his shoulder. The simple contact sent lightning through his system. "Why do you hide from the world?" Rose proved harder to handle. The Irish girl had a tongue sharp as a skinning knife and a body she wielded like a weapon. She'd perch on his table, legs swinging, her dress hiked scandalously high, and regale him with tales that made his ears burn and his pants uncomfortably tight. "You ever been with a woman, Tom?" she asked bluntly on the second night, her eyes dancing with mischief. When his face flamed red as a sunset, she laughed, but there was kindness in it. "Don't worry, love. We're not going to eat you alive." But it was Maria who haunted his dreams and filled his waking thoughts. She spoke little, but her presence was like a song just beyond hearing, beautiful and aching. She'd watch him with those dark eyes that seemed to see straight through to his wounded soul. On the third night, as the others slept, Tom found Maria standing by the window, moonlight on snow painting her in silver and shadow. Her nightgown, borrowed from his meager supplies, hung loose on her frame, but somehow made her more beautiful than any fancy dress could. "Can't sleep?" he asked softly. She turned, and in the moonlight, he saw tear tracks on her cheeks. "I dream of my people sometimes. Before the soldiers came. Before," she gestured vaguely, encompassing all the pain that had led her to this moment. Tom stepped closer, drawn by something stronger than gravity. "Tell me about them." Maria smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her. "We have a word, nadlehe. It means a man with the heart of a woman. Not weak, strong in a different way. Gentle, nurturing." Her fingers reached out, almost touching his face before dropping away. "That is what you are, Tom Mackenzie." The space between them crackled with unspoken desire. Tom had never wanted anything the way he wanted to close that distance, to taste those lips that spoke such beautiful words. But as he leaned forward, Maria stepped back. "No," she whispered, but her voice broke on the word. "You don't understand what I am, what I've done to survive." "I don't care," Tom said, and realized he meant it. Whatever her past held, the woman before him was worth fighting for, worth protecting, worth loving. Maria's eyes widened at the word love. Had he said it aloud? But before either could speak, Rose's voice cut through the moment. "Well, ain't this sweet?" she said, but her tone held no mockery. "Tom, you beautiful fool. You're halfway in love with her already, aren't you?" Clara appeared beside Rose, her expression maternal and knowing. "Leave them be, Rose. Some things can't be rushed." But the moment was broken, and Maria had already retreated to her makeshift bed. Tom stood in the moonlight, his heart pounding like war drums, knowing that everything was about to change. By morning, the storm would break. By evening, their sanctuary would be shattered. But for now, in this cabin filled with impossible women and impossible dreams, Tom Mackenzie felt truly alive for the first time in 22 years. Dawn brought more than just clear skies. It brought the thunder of hoofbeats and the click of rifle hammers being pulled back. Tom had been splitting firewood when the riders appeared like devils rising from the snow-covered prairie. 7 men led by Sheriff Dawson, whose badge had been bought and paid for by Madam Betty years ago. Tom Mackenzie. Dawson's voice carried the authority of corruption backed by Winchester rifles. You got something that belongs to Madam Betty. Send 'em out, and we'll call it even. Tom's hands found his Colt .45, the familiar weight steadying his nerves. Behind him, he heard the cabin door open. Clara, Rose, and Maria stepped onto his porch, defiance written in every line of their bodies. Nobody belongs to anybody on my land, Tom called back, his voice carrying across the snow like a prayer. For the first time in years, his hands weren't shaking. Sheriff Dawson laughed, but there was no humor in it. Boy, you got no idea what you're playing with. These ain't innocent ladies. They're whores. Property. And property gets returned to its owner. That word, whores, hit Tom like a physical blow. Not because he was shocked, but because he realized it didn't matter. Not to him. Not anymore. The only thing getting returned today is your sorry hide to whatever hole you crawled out of, Tom said, and felt Maria's sharp intake of breath behind him. The gunfight that followed became legend in Prairie Creek, though most folks got the details wrong. They said Tom Mackenzie faced down 7 men alone, like some kind of folk hero. The truth was more beautiful and more terrifying than any legend. Maria had slipped away during the standoff, disappearing like smoke into the tree line. As the first shots rang out, she reappeared with a bow she'd crafted from ash wood and arrows fletched with her own hair. While Tom drew fire from behind his overturned wagon, Maria became a ghost in the white landscape. Clara pulled Rose behind the cabin's thick walls, but not before the Irish girl grabbed Tom's spare rifle. I ain't dying without a fight, Rose snarled, blood on her lips from where she'd bitten through them. The battle was brutal and swift. Tom's Colt spoke 6 times, and 6 times men fell. Maria's arrows found their marks with Apache precision, 2 men dropping silently with shafts through their hearts. When Sheriff Dawson made his final desperate charge, Rose's rifle cracked once, and the corrupt lawman tumbled from his horse into the blood-stained snow. In the sudden silence that followed, Tom felt the world shift beneath his feet. He'd killed men before, but never like this. Never for something, someone, he couldn't bear to lose. Rose was wounded, a bullet through her shoulder that had her cursing in 3 languages. Clara tended her with steady hands, while Maria stood like a bronze statue, bow still in hand, her dark eyes fixed on the fallen men. This ain't over, Tom said quietly, the weight of truth heavy in his voice. Betty's got connections. Federal marshals, maybe even the army. They'll come looking. Clara looked up from bandaging Rose's wound, understanding in her eyes. We know. That night, as Rose fought fever and pain, the 3 women made their choice. Tom found them packing the few belongings they'd gathered during their brief sanctuary. You can't stay, Maria said without looking at him, and we can't drag you into our war. Tom's chest felt like it was caving in. I could come with you. No. Clara's voice was gentle, but final. You're a good man, Tom. But we're not good women. We're survivors, and survival makes you hard in ways you ain't ready for. The truth hung between them like morning mist, beautiful and impossible to hold. They left before dawn, but not before Maria came to him one last time. Tom was sitting on his porch, watching the stars fade into morning, when she appeared beside him like a prayer made flesh. In the gray light, wearing Clara's borrowed dress, she looked like everything he'd never known he wanted. I need you to understand something, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. What happened between us? It wasn't nothing. It was everything. Tom's throat felt raw. Then why are you leaving? Maria's fingers found his face, tracing the stubble along his jaw. Because you deserve better than a broken woman with blood on her hands and shadows in her past. You deserve someone clean. Someone... You, Tom said fiercely, catching her wrist. I deserve you. The kiss that followed was desperate and sweet, filled with all the words they couldn't say and all the tomorrows they couldn't have. Maria tasted like regret and wild honey, and Tom memorized every second because he knew it would have to last a lifetime. When they broke apart, Maria's cheeks were wet with tears. In Apache, we have another word, Shinee. It means my heart. You are my heart, Tom Mackenzie. But hearts can be cut out and still leave you alive. She stood to go, but Tom caught her hand one last time. Will I see you again? Maria's smile was heartbreak and hope wrapped in mystery. Ask the wind. Ask the stars. Ask the prairie grass that remembers everything. She pressed something into his palm, a small carved arrowhead, warm from her touch. Some stories don't end, Tom. They just wait. Clara kissed his cheek like a sister might, her lips warm and soft. Find yourself a good woman, Tom. Have babies. Build something beautiful. She paused. But don't forget us either. Rose, her arm in a sling, but her spirit unbroken, punched his shoulder with her good hand. You beautiful bastard, she said fondly. You saved us, you know that? Not just from them, from thinking all men were monsters. And then they were gone. 3 figures disappearing into the morning mist like something from a dream. Tom stood on his porch for a long time, the carved arrowhead burning against his palm, wondering if his heart would ever beat normal again. The townspeople came later that day. Doc Peterson to tend the wounded, Sheriff Murphy from the county seat to investigate the shooting, curious neighbors drawn by stories of gunfights and mysterious women. They found Tom different somehow, steadier, sadder, but more solid than before. You done good, son, old Murphy said, looking over the bodies. Dawson and his boys have been trouble for years. Federal marshals been looking for an excuse to clean house at Betty's place. But Tom barely heard him. His eyes were fixed on the horizon, where 3 women had vanished with his heart, leaving him forever changed in the cabin, where he'd learned that love and loss were just 2 sides of the same impossible coin. The carved arrowhead would never leave his pocket, and Maria Santos would never leave his dreams. 18 months passed like seasons of healing. Tom Mackenzie was no longer the frightened virgin of Prairie Creek. The townspeople saw it in the way he carried himself, confident but not cocky, gentle but unbreakable. Women smiled at him now, without receiving stammering fear in return. He'd even courted the schoolteacher briefly, though something always held him back from anything serious. His ranch had grown prosperous, his reputation solid. He was known as a fair man, a protector of the innocent, someone who'd stand up to corruption no matter the cost. The legend of the gunfight grew with each telling, but Tom never corrected the stories. Some truths were too precious to share. On a golden September evening, as Tom worked with a Mustang in his corral, the sound of approaching hoofbeats made him look up. A lone rider emerged from the heat shimmer of the prairie, a woman on a paint horse, her long black hair flowing free in the wind. She dismounted with fluid grace, walked to the corral fence, and simply looked at him. The carved arrowhead in Tom's pocket seemed to pulse with warmth. I found what I was looking for out there, Maria said, her voice rich as honey whiskey. My people, my past, my peace. She paused, and her smile held all the promise in the world. Now, I want to find my future. Tom's answering smile was answer enough. Some stories, it turned out, were worth the wait. If this story touched something in your heart, hit that like button and let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight. And don't forget to subscribe for more tales from the wild frontier, where love and redemption ride the same dusty trail.